So, after all the cliffhangers that we've had this season, the finale's finally here. As always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review. I'm going to be talking about Star Trek Prodigy, Season 1, Episode 20, Supernova Part 2. So if you haven't seen it, this will contain spoilers. And yeah, I've got to say, I think this is my favourite episode of the season. Very well balanced. All the character arcs they set up this season are pretty nicely closed. There's a few mysteries left, like weird dials from, and some great setup for Season 2. But I've got to be honest, I was pretty surprised about how emotional or emotionally charged this episode was, especially the second half. And it really delivers on the quality of Star Trek that we haven't seen for a while, at least if you're asking me. It looks great, but that's no change from every week. There's not a lot of action here this week, but my god, do some of the scenes stand out. And the score is also pretty hard hitting in this episode, especially in those emotional moments that I just mentioned. What I love about this show is, even though it's a kids show, it gets what Star Trek is, what it's about, and it knows how to use it in a format that, for me at least, works. And I say this every week, but this is my favourite Star Trek that's on at the moment, and this episode completely reinforces that opinion. So, let's get into the episode then. Starfleet is still going at each other, and Dal has a plan to destroy the protostar to stop the signal at the source. But destroying the ship means destroying the protostar core going bang, and that would wipe out the entire fleet anyway. So they decide to blow the ship as it enters a proto-warp jump to spread the explosion out through space, which, yeah, is pretty sensible, and yeah, has some big things that are going to come from it, but I'll get to that later on. But as always with a great plan, there's a big catch. There's no autopilot, so Dal wants to be the one that stays behind to jump the ship. But Admiral Janeway steps up because she can be copied, so plan all round, guys. And at this moment I was like, are they really going to destroy the ship? And then I thought, well, it's called Star Trek Prodigy, not Star Trek Protostar, and I'm sure they're going to find a way around it. And, you know, they kind of do. But there's a catch. After the catch is there's not enough free space to take Admiral Janeway and copy her. But she doesn't tell them that, and that is very real Janeway of her, let's be honest, guys. And the bit where they're abandoning the ship, I don't know if it was just me, but we get some heavy Star Trek Death of the Enterprise ship moments, and it's Rock Talk that really has the bones line about turning things into a fighting chance to live. And this is only 7 minutes into this episode. It's all going on that they're getting rid of the ship and they're ready to destroy it, and Janeway's going to die. And this episode is just jam-packed this week. But yeah, them abandoning the ship and Admiral Janeway getting ready to jump was epic. Let's say the emotional scenes in this and the music in this scene, it looked amazing. I would say it maybe looked better than all the action shots that we got at the end of last week's episode. But yeah, the explosion of the ship and the look on their faces and their reactions were absolutely amazing. And once the protostar is destroyed, all the red bits that should be blue on Starfleet ships go back to being blue, so it's all good again. Now, straight after this, real Janeway says that she wants to search for the crew, and she's told that it's pretty much going to take months because they've got no idea where they are. So I thought that this was just going to be the jumping off point for Season 2. And there was a lot of questions here, and I was like, where are they going to go? There's still like 3/4 of this episode left. And this is really just where this episode kind of begins, because when the gang are on their little shuttle and they get the message from Admiral Janeway, again, it's just another solid emotional hit. After this, she explains that her growth and her time with him has meant that she was too big, that she couldn't be copied or downloaded. So yeah, man, that's a bit of a cruel irony, and it did hit hard. Like, I know it's just a Admiral Janeway and it's not the real one, but come on, man, it got you. It got me at least. But I think she is going to be back, and I'll explain why later on in the video. Now, one thing that I didn't expect to see in this show was Earth, but pretty much the last half of the episode is set there. And Starfleet's analysing what happened with the protostar explosion, and because it happened over such a great distance and it was so big, it's actually created a wormhole and a twist in the story. Because they've detected a signal from the protostar, because remember, The protostar that's been in this season is from the future, although it was already made in the past. So same ship, different time, well, or same time, just different ship depending on your point of view. But again, the protostar at this point in the story's present is lost with Chakotay. And there's another twist because there's a signal from Chakotay 52 years in the future where the protostar ended up. So definitely season 2 arcs there. Chakotay's alive and now they're going to try and reach him. But Starfleet discovers the gang in deep space and takes them back to San Francisco. And I say it every week, but this is my sort of Star Wars minute of this episode, where the bit where they land was very much a hero's welcome. But it didn't get too Star Warsy because instead of getting gold medals, they got put on trial. And people used to say Star Trek was dull because of stuff like this, but I like it. Now, real Janeway, of course, bats for the guys and wants all to be forgiven and them to be taken into Starfleet Academy. And this is where this episode really excels for me, because the speech that Janeway gives here is better than anything that we've gotten in 4 seasons of Discovery, 2 seasons of Picard, and the first season of Strange New Worlds. At least for me, the whole Janeway speech was really good, but the one that Admiral Janeway gives in the sort of trial just really struck me as, man, this is what Star Trek's missing, and this is a kids show and it's doing it so well. And I said at the start of the video, but the creators and writers of this show understand Trek, how it works, and they respect its legacy as well. Even all the stuff last week with the ships and the details looked absolutely outstanding. Part of me does think that the writers of the live-action Trek show just read a Star Trek Wikipedia page, throw in a few familiar character names like Uhura and Kirk, a few familiar place names like Vulcan or Navarre or whatever it's called these days, but this show is really pushing what Star Trek is. But the way that Janeway frames what Dal is and how he represents what the Federation is, I loved it and I didn't see it coming. But his origins are still going to be a season 2 mystery, I think. And of course it does have to be a happy-ish ending, so there's no charges and they all get into Starfleet Academy, sort of. They don't get into the Academy, but Janeway convinces Starfleet to let them be sort of apprentices under her. So going back to Star Wars, does that mean that she's Palpatine or Yoda? Think about that for a second, seriously. But Gwen's the one that doesn't want to join in because she wants to help with Starfleet's first contact with her species. That again, if you remember, hasn't happened yet, and the Diviner made her promise that in the last episode. So now she's going off, and she's called the Unifier. So again, another great twist, and another season 2 setup. The episode ends with the gang on Earth learning new things. Zero gets an upgrade to an Apple product. What do you think about that look, by the way? I'm not too sure. I think I'll need to see it a few more times before I settle on it. I think that was right about in my last video, if you watched it. I said that the younger Diviner was still out there, and Gwen mentions that. So he's going to be back, hopefully, in season 2. But how are they going to get there? Well, they get a new ship, sort of. The protostar was, after all, a prototype, and it's now in mass production, but this isn't the ship that the gang are getting. No, they're getting something else, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but the protostar now being in mass production, and this happens before Star Trek Picard, does that mean we're going to see a protostar class in Star Trek Picard? Because we know there's going to be a California class showing up, so I think that'd be really interesting if they did do it, and it be pretty damn cool. I'd love to see a live action protostar, but let me know what you guys think about that. Anyway, says that this isn't their ship, so what is going to be their ship on their new mission? Well, I think it's going to be the Voyager A, because what else could it be? And if I'm right, that opens a lot of possibilities, because you could bring back other Voyager crew members, you know, like Kim and Torres on top of Chakotay. And there's a hologram missing, so you might get the holographic Doctor replacing Holo Janeway. I think that's a really great idea. I know these are just theories at this point, but I definitely think that Voyager A, or some sort of spin on Voyager, is going to be their new ship. At least for part of the new season. And I do think we are going to get a few familiar faces in season 2 as well. Because her getting the band back together to find Chakotay makes sense. It seems they're doing something similar in Picard Season 3 already. But I think this was an absolutely fantastic finale, and I can't wait to see what this show's going to do next season. And I think when people look back, this will be considered a great season of Star Trek. I know that this show is not for everyone, and I completely get why, but if you haven't watched this show, I would say, honestly, do just give it a chance. There's 20 episodes, they're 27 minutes or so each. What else are you doing? There's no Star Trek on until middle of February anyway at the moment. But yeah, the finale was full of Trek spirit and goodness, not too much action, great resolution to the stuff they'd set up, fantastic Season 2 setup, and that's just the stuff that we know about. I mean, what else is coming that we don't? But yeah, I really wasn't expecting the finale to be this good, especially the second half. It was so solid. But as always, these are just my opinions. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you enjoyed Season 1 of Star Trek Prodigy? Did you enjoy the finale? What do you think on Season 2? I've got a few ideas and I'm going to do a few more videos on that, so make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. And if you've made it this far, thanks for watching.